From experience, we know it's always better together. And that's our next topic, better together. Strategic business outcomes, a focused session along with NIIT's partners by Darshini Santhanam, Head of Customer Training JPAC, Google Cloud. Over to you, Darshini.
Thank you so much, Dilip. I really enjoyed the last part of the conversation. I had the opportunity to listen into. A lot of the conversation was focused around skills and the incredible skills that exist in the India market. I have to say, as someone who leads a training organization for the region, I agree. I do think that India is at the forefront of tech skills, and we're constantly looking to learn from that market. So with that, why don't I kick off my presentation? Brilliant. So as Dilip mentioned, I am with Google Cloud, and I do lead our customer training organization for the region, including India. My background is actually both across training as well as marketing. And prior to this particular job, I used to lead our internal Google Cloud employee enablement efforts. So I've been in learning a long time. This is something I feel deeply passionate about. I care deeply about what skills mean and how we get it out to people. And I want to say the last 2 years have probably accelerated how we should be thinking about it. We'd have probably been headed towards the direction of creating more learning cultures anyway. But good or bad, the last 2 years have forced us to really think about how we enable our people to be able to do more. So today, I'm going to focus on that particular topic. I'm going to talk about what it takes to develop a learning culture in your organization so that you continue to retain people. We all agree that people are our number one resource. So retain people, but also give them the opportunity to constantly evolve and set themselves up for success and ultimately set your organizations up for success. So with that, I want to start with the caveat and call out the elephant in the room. Very often, we use the word learning and training interchangeably, and these are not the same things. Training is not equal to learning. And I want you to think about what that means to you as well as we go through the next 15 or so minutes of what I'm going to share. Learning is much more than just a point-in-time training. It's not a case of let's wake up at 9, log in, do a couple of hours of this training, and then log off, mark my attendance, and I'm done. Learning is a culture. And that's where it starts to really drive effectiveness. A study has actually shown that almost 70% of L&D is still done in very traditional methods. Typically, this would have been classroom. Now it's a virtual classroom, and that's that. Now, classroom training is not a bad thing. Classroom training is a wonderful thing, super effective. But having just that is often where the problem lies. Now, at Google, we think about learning as a whole. We think about it end to end. And we think about what it means to take training well out of the classroom and really have it stick in a way in which people come back and people learn in micro doses on an ongoing basis. One of the outcomes of that has actually been the fact that we have named ourselves, our team, a learning services organization. We don't see ourselves as a training organization. We see ourselves as a learning service organization. And that is a nod to how we think about and how we approach skilling. As we go along this journey today of exploring what it means to create a learning culture, I will be using the example of cloud skills and the cloud skills gap and the challenge that we see in the industry today. Think about this example as representative for almost any and every digital skill that you're seeking out within your own organizations as well. Think about this as a representative example of any adaptive skills you want to see your talent take on as well. For the past few years, and I expect for the foreseeable couple of years as well, cloud skills is a challenge. Now, when someone does a search for it, you see the kind of results you get. You have cloud skills challenge, cloud skills gap, and cloud skills shortage. So very clearly, this remains a massive gap. To what extent? More than 3 out of 4 IT decision makers, so 77% of IT decision makers have explicitly reported a massive lack of knowledge and skill as being a challenge to them being able to succeed within their organizations. That is 3 out of 4 IT heads and IT department leads who have reported this. It's a pretty significant number if you think about it. Now, why is it that this gap is a challenge. Here's why. Cloud first requires a very different set of skills than what has previously existed in IT departments. Now, there are gaps at an organizational level, there are gaps at a company-wide level, and then we just have this massive gap at an industry-wide level. This industry is going through massive transformation. And this industry is touching upon every other industry that exists in the world today. With the cloud opening up, the limitations on infrastructure reduce. However, what that means then is the people who are operating this machinery, the people who are operating this infrastructure, now need to be thinking very differently if they want to truly add value to the business. So IT orgs are now being asked for much, much more. They're being asked to deliver at a faster rate. They're being asked to deliver at a higher optimization. And they're being asked to deliver things that they wouldn't have traditionally been asked to. And that's putting a significant amount of pressure on them. Now, an organization is ultimately made up of people. So an IT organization is people, and people are our biggest resource. So to bridge this gap, we started embarking on this journey of taking what we have learned as Google Cloud and taking it to our customers. And that comes down to being able to build a culture of continuous learning, not a one-time activity, not a here I am, get certified and out activity, but what do we do to build the right skills, the right knowledge over a period of time, and most importantly, create a hook for your learners to keep coming back and doing this. Do this with the support of their organizations, do this with the support of what the industry offers, and then do this independently as individuals. What you want and what you're probably seeking is a team that just learns on its own. And every time something new comes out, a team that leans in to learning when that opportunity opens up. Now, employees will learn to accept that change. They will embrace challenges and they will embrace that new knowledge once they start getting into the habit of it. Now, we know employees are a company's largest asset, and this learning culture, a continuous learning culture, is one way in which you can really drive the right engagement from there. The largest benefit and a huge bonus for any organization looking to invest in learning is this. Employees who embrace growth feel far more empowered and engaged compared to organizations that have few offerings where employees are not encouraged to lean into learning opportunities. A recent Harvard Business Review article actually suggests that research supports learning can help reduce and elevate stress in employees. It provides just the right skills, the abilities to give them the confidence to address short-term and future stressors. And ultimately, it creates competence. And when it creates competence, it gives those individuals a clear sense of purpose and development. There you are. You're struggling with the skills gap. You build these skills up, you build the right culture in your organization, and then boom, you have people who stay and you have people who continue to give back to your organization with their renewed energy and their way of thinking. So what happens when businesses have actually taken this learning culture and implemented it? Here's what we're seeing. Companies with learning cultures are 58% more likely to have the skills that they need within their own talent pipelines to meet changing marketplace needs. When it comes to newer skills, given how scarce it is in the marketplace, it's going to be more and more critical for businesses to be able to reach out internally and reskill. Internally look at the right talent pools and have them take on the sharper edges of where you're transforming. Sounds great, right? Sounds like a no-brainer, but here's the catch. Only about 10% of organizations have actually managed to create some form of learning culture in their organizations. So there is still a huge opportunity here for you to think about what you can do in your own organizations to create that and really leverage the impact it's going to give you long-term for your business. Okay, I've talked a lot about why. I've talked a lot about some of the numbers and metrics and the impact of having a learning organization, a learning culture in your organization. I'm going to give you 3 quick tips now on how to make that come to life. So how do you create a learning culture? Step one, make learning part of your core value. Step two, establish strong leadership and sponsorship when it comes to learning. Learning cannot sit in a silo. It has to sit with the decision makers. It has to sit with the influencers within your organization. Step three, ensure systems support learning. That allows it to make it sticky. It allows you to gamify. So I'm going to deep dive into each and every one of these. Let's talk about making learning a core value. Now, in order to make learning part of your culture, commitment from the entire organization is critical. It starts with that commitment, and you need to be able to articulate your values and beliefs around learning in a very clear way. You have to make it safe for people to fail. If failure is punished, people are not going to try new things. People are going to be afraid to build a new skill set. So when you have these opportunities to fail, use them to then turn it into a learning exercise for the wider team. Think about holding blameless postmortems in order to work out improvements to your processes or system. Bring people together to talk about what they have learned and share. So rather than it just being a one-way dump of a trainer talking to a class and giving them a whole bunch of ideas to take home in their own brains, have them bring those ideas to life in a discussion that is directly related to their jobs thereafter. Introduce that idea of reflecting on it, right? Knowledge transfer is not learning. That's not adequate. That starts the conversation, right? That's a bare minimum to kicking off this learning journey. However, reflecting on it, absorbing that information, and then ultimately practicing it is really where those skills get learned and where employees build that competence. So learning needs to be built into the DNA, starting with when an employee onboards all the way through their career. Thinking about the employee journey will also drive that core value early with employees. The second step I was talking about is establish strong leadership sponsorship. Without sponsorship, I can guarantee you it's going to be very hard to implement any new learning, any new skilling, any talent transformation within your organization. And even if learning is part of the overall culture, if each individual team and leader does not sponsor it, it will not be effective. So what you're looking for is almost unanimous leadership and sponsorship. Employees need to see their bosses, they need to see their leaders believing that learning is important and then actually walking the walk. They need to see them complete their modules as well. They need to see how they're spending their time, what their investment is on learning, and they need to see leaders incentivize learning for the wider organization. So strong leadership is absolutely critical. And then ultimately, one of the tools that we use that we believe helps make this sticky is creating goals around learning, KPIs, OKRs, and really acknowledging best efforts very publicly so as to showcase best in class talent from a learning perspective around the world. I'd like to share with you an example of one of the customers that we've worked with that has benefited from it, and that's HSBC. You can see the quote up there. They went along the journey of large talent transformation and really started from the point of saying, what would great learning culture look like? And then let's work out the mechanics of what pieces will contribute to it, right? But starting with really getting sponsorship to articulate this need and then have that almost get contagious within the organization has been hugely instrumental to HSBC succeeding here. They've been early adopters, and they've really continuing to drive that strong learning culture and are benefiting from the results following that strong learning culture. The third aspect that I talked about comes down to this. Invest in building processes and tools that ultimately support and incentivize learning. This is where the rubber meets the road. Systems, processes, tools should support and incentivize individuals to learn and make it fun. we cannot forget that it's only when we have fun along the journey that this actually really starts to come to life for an individual and for an employee. So make it fun. There are tons of great gamification techniques that exist in the universe today that you can tap into. Look at creating different structures, modules, different approaches that appeal to different types of learners, and ultimately incentivize your employees to go along this journey. Create a training budget and then advocate for it internally. You need to emphasize how important this is in order to ultimately demonstrate to your people that you are putting your money where your mouth is. Learning doesn't happen by accident, and learning will not happen without the actual investment to support it. Make resources available for continued education. What happens after they've left the classroom? What happens once they've gotten certified? How are you going to give your employees the space to go explore this on their own? That's a question you need to answer up front in your strategy for building that learning culture. Ensure that your team has the resources to engage in informal learning. Create the space to explore these ideas. When I say create the space, I mean create physical space in meetings to have a conversation about learnings. Also, create other structures through which people have the opportunity to learn on the job. An example I like to share here is the famed 20% project approach that Google and Google Cloud believe in, which is to say, if individuals are interested in doing something outside the scope of their immediate jobs, they're welcome to do it by creating, by mutually agreeing on and creating this 20% commitment for a period of time where they go work with a different team, or they go work with a different process, or they go work with a different region temporarily, and explore how work is done in that space. So I've personally taken up multiple 20% projects during my career at Google, and that typically lasts 3 to 6 months. It's typically a day a week or sometimes even less. And essentially it's allowed me to actually build skills that have really taken textbook learning and converted it into real results. Incentivize learning. Do not underestimate the importance of recognizing accomplishments in learning and celebrating learning milestones with employees. The reason I'm sharing these with you, right? I shared a few key themes here. 1, make learning fun. 2, have a budget in order. 3, make resources available for continued education. 4, ensure that your team has the resources to engage in informal approaches to education. And 5, incentivize learning. The reason I bring these up is you cannot be successful in building a learning culture if you don't have a conscious effort against it. And you need people thinking about this journey for your employees along the way. So to sum it up, 3 key steps on how to build that culture. Step 1, make learning part of your core values. It really drives impact and employee engagement. Step 2, establish strong leadership sponsorship. This is key to having your talent transformation land the way you intend for it to land. And 3, ensure system support learning. Make sure that you have the right structures in place to really turn this into an ongoing thing. With that, I'd like to leave you with a question. What is your commitment to learning in your organization? And what does learning culture mean to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Darshini. That was very, very meaningful. Thank you so much. Indeed, better together.